Welcome once again to another episode of What Happened that has been a very long time coming, as Midway is a company that's been mentioned on this show at least 321 times by my last count. While they had released an extraordinary amount of fan-favorite games under their banner, they had just as many misses and oodles of financial mismanagement.
You want some fries with that whoop ass?
Therefore, Midway's long, protracted 10-year death march to bankruptcy is ripe to be exposed on our stage. So grab your ninja spear and get ready to jam! It's time to find out what happened to Midway.
Boom shakalaka!
It's 1958, Jesus, and Midway Manufacturing was founded in Franklin Park, Illinois, where they specialized in the pumping out of cheesy amusement machines dripping in Americana. Rifle games, pinball, and, I don't know, spitting into metal cans, why not? In 1969, Midway was purchased by Bally, who are a big name in the pinball world and recently have become a giant in the slot machine markets, and they wanted a company that could capitalize on these newfangled arcade machines that could display computer graphics, produce sound, and run via coin operation.
And in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 B's for a quarter, you'd say.
During the 70s, Midway built a close relationship with Taito, distributing each other's games in their respective regions. Most notably, Taito's biggest hit ever, save for violence fight, Space Invaders.
Invaders! Possibly from space!
As you can imagine, this catapulted Midway to the forefront of the American arcade scene with aplomb. Midway was able to survive the video game crash of the early 80s thanks in part to the publishing deals with Namco and Taito. They continued to release arcade games at a regular clip without any internally developed smash hits until 1986, where they very much released a smash hit.
Ha ha, very funny, motherfucker!
Rampage did very well in the arcades for Midway, so well in fact that it would find itself ported to 11 home consoles over the next few years. This may have been the epiphany Midway needed to realize how lucrative the home market could be, but they would never be able to fully execute on that lesson. More on that later. Then, in 1988, Williams, remember that name? You'd see it all over MK3, purchased Bally Midway for some reason. Capitalism, I guess.
Capitalism at its finest.
Williams also made pinball and arcade games, but were based out of Chicago, and once the purchase was finalized, they moved all of Midway's operations to the Windy City as well. As the blinding neon of the 90s started to shine, pinball's luster began to fade. Williams/Midway saw declining revenues from their pinball division, so they decided to shift their focus to arcade games as their main money spinner. And goddamn, did they ever wind up spinning some money. Such as Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat 2, Revolution X, and on top of them all,
War Gods!
It can't be overstated just how successful this lineup was, especially Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam. Hell, MK2's arcade dominance is what frightened Capcom enough to hire another Chicago-based company,
Incredible Technologies!
to digitize actors for the next Street Fighter. For more info on that whole debacle, Slam Master into this video right here. They didn't just make their own arcade blockbusters though, as they also saw value in manufacturing and distributing arcade cabinets for other companies like Rare and Nintendo, resulting in 2 Killer Instinct titles as well as Cruis'n USA.
Cruis'n USA is an unparalleled video achievement.
All of these games had something in common. They were all over the top in the best possible ways, and would draw a crowd either through violence or attractive visuals, both very important in the 90s game market. To put it simply, kids loved what Midway was selling. So while things were booming in hazy, smoke-filled, maze-like arcades, there was still money being left on the table in the home market. While ports of Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam were doing gangbusters, Midway's deal with Acclaim to publish them was reportedly very much in Acclaim's favor. While all the arcade profits were Midway's to keep, the real money was going elsewhere. And in NBA Jam's case, it was paying for the IP itself. This is because Acclaim was actually able to wrest control of the name NBA Jam from Midway, or the combination of the two words NBA and Jam, since they obviously couldn't own the NBA brand name itself. This is why you saw weird Jam games that nobody played, leaving Midway to make do with the likes of NBA Hangtime and NBA Showtime, which, while fun, would have probably done a lot better if they had been able to continue with the NBA Jam moniker. Acclaim's third-quarter steal of the Jam name is what spurred Williams/Midway to start publishing their own titles for the home, making sure they wouldn't need to jockey with other publishers in the future.
I gotta put me first. I gotta put me first. I gotta put me first.
Fortunately, this move went fairly smoothly for the rest of the 90s, when the term arcade perfect still meant something. But as the new millennium dawned, arcades became less and less busy. The industry at large started to look past the arcades and towards the PlayStation and N64, which are offering longer and more feature-rich experiences. Midway suddenly realized they needed to get their shit together. Now, while Midway had excelled in arcades, their home offerings were meager compared to other arcade giants like Capcom, who for the last 2 decades had built up a massive collection of home console brands. Midway didn't exactly have that, and simple arcade ports weren't going to cut it as the industry moved rapidly forward.
Man, stay off the light speed!
My bad.
Knowing they need to increase their workforce and stable their franchises for this big paradigm shift, Midway bought out arcade competitor Atari Games, best known for series like Gauntlet, Primal Rage, and San Francisco Rush. The first few years under new management weren't bad, as Atari did put out Rush 2049, Gauntlet Dark Legacy, and War Final Assault. Whoa, does anyone remember this one? But it also resulted in a few cancelled projects, most famously Primal Rage 2. This acquisition happened very fast and caused some brand awareness issues. Mace the Dark Age, for example, was unabashedly an Atari title, but the home version, which released only a few months later, would be published under Midway. This use of the Atari name on their titles post-acquisition would cause some confusion among fans, and the studio would eventually be renamed to Midway Games West in 1999. It's also around this time where Midway started publishing and financing a lot of stuff, even teaming up with id Software to develop and publish a string of fantastic FPS ports for modern consoles. Doom on the PlayStation, Doom 64, and a whole shitload of Quake. I could go deep on all these cool ports, but I gotta stay on task, and honestly, you can just check out Grunkle Derek's various videos on them over on Stop Skeletons from Fighting. All of this is to say that Midway was spending and publishing a lot, without being super careful about what those products were. For every Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Blitz, or Doom, there was a Chopper Attack, Assault Retribution, or Mortal Kombat Special Forces.
Kano, you're gonna pay for this.
This is why 1999 was the last time Midway posted a net profit. From then on out, they were starting to outspend what they were making. This came to a head in 2001, where they dumped their arcade division entirely, which up until recently had been their bread and butter. They're going all in on console. So, for the first time ever, Mortal Kombat had to provide an experience that was more than just sucking away my quarters thanks to its shitty input reading AI. I mean, it had to provide a more feature-rich experience. This is why Ed Boon and his expanded team designed content like Conquest Mode, The Crypt, and other things beginning with K. Therefore, it flows logically why Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance took longer and was more expensive to make than any other game in the series up to that point. And the same rule likely applied to pretty much every other Midway IP. So while there were some highlights over the next few years like Mortal Kombat, Shaolin Monks, PsyOps, the Mindgate Conspiracy, and The Suffering, even more money would be burned in dumpsters like Dr. Muto, Narc, Haven, Call of the King, and Gauntlet 7 Sorrows, all of them failing spectacularly at retail.
What could possibly go wrong?
Now, it's 2003, which was a very interesting year for the company due to two reasons. One, the hiring of David Zucker to the role of Midway CEO, hot off his stint of being president of Playboy Enterprises, and two, Sumner Redstone, the late billionaire, who would eventually own around 87% of Midway's stock when all was said and done, and basically shielded Midway for the next 7 years of losses. On the flip side, despite Zucker's hiring was meant to bring the company back to profitability, he did the exact opposite. Midway lost $108.5 million in 2005, $72 million in 2006, $78 million in 2007, and so on and so forth.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
What didn't help these losses was Zucker's insistence to adopt Unreal Engine 3 as the engine that would power all of their upcoming AAA releases, so royalties would have to be paid out for every success and failure alike. Speaking of financial failures, Stranglehold!
Do me a favor. Kill yourself!
This was Midway's first internally developed AAA HD game, and one that hurt the company immensely in the long run. Bringing in director John Woo, his production company Tiger Hill, Chow Yun Fat, an expensive engine, a corporate mandated multiplayer mode, and a big marketing campaign sent the dollar doves flying over $30 million in development costs. To put that into perspective, Assassin's Creed, which released that same year, cost $20 million. But while Altair slashed up over 8 million copies in 15 months, Inspector Tequila only managed a vague 1 million units, which meant it missed Midway's target of 1.5. This was kind of embarrassing when you consider European Midway rep following quote. In order to recoup development money, you obviously have to sell a lot of units, but what we're seeing to date is that we will sell those units. Stranglehold will be the top-selling title this Christmas. It was not. This wasn't even Midway's only high-profile disaster. There were also the 2 years wasted on developing Fear and Respect, a GTA-like sandbox game starring Snoop Dogg and written by the late John Singleton. This was given a lavish spread in Game Informer and was slated for an ambitious cross-gen debut on multiple formats. Even though it was slated to come out in 2006, the only thing that did happen that year was its quiet cancellation. David Zucker reasoned that this was at least partially owed to the increasingly crowded status of the open-world sandbox genre, and Midway didn't want to rehash old ideas. Anyway, he did add that Midway was still working with both Singleton and Snoop to make another game, which they never did.
It's all good. I ain't tripping. Them bitches didn't know no better.
Let's not forget about the commercial bomb that was Black Site Area 51, a soulless Call of Duty-esque take on the old arcade franchise that the legendary Harvey Smith had been working on. When asked about this game's rushed, troubled development, he stated, and I quote, "That project was so fucked up." Midway fired him soon after. But there was, without a doubt, one disaster more expensive and embarrassing than all the rest. Clocking in somewhere between $40 and $50 million was Midway and Warner Brothers' joint venture, This Is Vegas. It was a lavish open-world recreation of the City of Sin that was dripping with gambling, fighting, racing, dancing, and other activities. But don't play the game after 10 p.m.
It gets a little blue.
Midway sunk millions and millions into this thing for years. Liam Robertson has a great video on it. And when it was finally starting to shape up, the Midway money men then realized they simply wouldn't even be able to afford to release it. David Zucker, for all these failures, was ousted by the shareholders in early 2008, which didn't really seem to be an amicable break. But don't feel too badly though, he landed safely via an appropriately sized golden parachute. Now, if Midway was losing tens of millions of dollars in operating costs every year, how did they even manage to stay afloat for a decade? Well, that would be loans that would need to be paid. See, the other thing that happened in 2008 was that Sumner Redstone had sold his shares in Midway to a mysterious investor by the name of Mark Thomas for a mere $100,000, way less than their value. What that meant was that Thomas would inherit the $70 million debt that Midway owed from various loans. This change of hands was also the green light for these creditors to demand what was due to them, but neither Midway or Thomas had that kind of cheddar, and thus, they just filed for bankruptcy. Then after that, Sumner and Thomas were embroiled in some type of litigation. Their deal might not have been on the up and up, shocker there, but more importantly, there were some cool games that were lost to all this corporate boobery. MK vs. DC was stated to get a bunch of DLC fighters, but wound up getting none. Mortal Kombat Fire and Ice, the sequel to Shaolin Monks, was cancelled when the studio Midway San Diego was sold to THQ. Gunrunner, a follow-up to Stranglehold, if you can believe it, never got out of pre-production. And finally, there was Hero, an ambitious open-world action game much in the style of Infamous or Prototype, which was also cancelled. Midway's assets were then put on the chopping block, with everything getting snapped up by the brothers Warner for something like $33 million back in 2009, which included Midway's main Chicago studio, which was rechristened to WB Games Chicago, which was rechristened once more as NetherRealm less than a year later. Now, some of you might not even be aware of this, but Warner Brothers didn't just get Mortal Kombat, but all of the IPs that were under Midway's banner. The same IPs which WB do absolutely nothing with today. Aside from a Gauntlet reboot, a terrible Rampage update, and no, that's it! Yeah, there's no Spy Hunter, Primal Rage, The Suffering, PsyOps, San Francisco Rush, The Grid. It's sad that 40 plus years of arcade and console history just sit there, completely unused. But hey, look at that, there's minuscule references to all that history in this one Mortal Kombat 11 stage. Thanks for okaying that, WB! Whew, so that was Midway's glorious rise and its less than glorious fall. But if you out there would like to know more about what happened to any other games, movies, or publishers, let me know in the comments below, over on my Twitter, or cruise on over to the Flophouse VIP Patreon to nominate what I tackle in the future. See you next time, and thanks for watching!